Hey everyone, Dan at Ochco Bushcraft. Well guys, we're out here doing another tarp setup with my new oilcloth tarp. Now, if you remember from the last video, we did a attachment point from the center loop, this 8-foot by 8-foot oilcloth tarp, to that tree right there. And then we made a little bipod behind it to pull the center up to get more room underneath, and stake down the back, stake down the front, and kind of made what looks a lot like a tent, a pyramid shaped tent. Well, today we're going to do something similar, but we're going to set it up in a way that we can use it with a fire. Now, fire season has been declared here, so I can't put a fire in front of the tent. We're going to have to wait till September before we can do that. That's usually when fire season is lifted. But I'm going to show you guys the setup. So basically we're turning everything around. You know, before the tree was connected to the front of the tarp. So to have a fire, the fire would have been sitting right in front of the tree, and that probably wouldn't have been a real good situation. So we're turning things around. The tree is now going to be the anchor point for the center of the tarp to pull it up for more room. And the front of the tarp is going to be set up on a bipod. Now I already went ahead and just did a quick shear lashing of 2 poles. And the front of our tarp is going to have a toggle that will come up. So that the tarp will be hooked here, as you'll see in a minute. And the toggle will sit on this side of the bipod. And then with some cordage, we're going to make 2 anchor points coming down to the front that will be staked to the ground. Now, you've probably seen this set up with a single anchor point. It's pretty common when a person wants to do a tarp setup and there's not a tree available. They can use a bipod like this and do a single anchor right to the front. Well, problem is then your cord is right in front of the flames of the fire. And if your cord gets hot and catches fire and burns, then your whole shelter topples. So this way we run 2 lines off to the sides to hold this down. The front will then be wide open along the ground, as you guys will see, and that will make a nice place for a fire right in front of an oilcloth tarp. So let's get started, guys. First thing we're going to do is I'm going to stake down the back 2 corners. I do not want this tarp moving around at all on me while I'm trying to work with it. So we're just going to stake down the back 2 corners. Got my Grand Force brook. And what's nice is these big plastic stakes actually fit perfect through the loops on this tarp, so I don't need to have any prusik knots or anything. Good enough. And this side. Okay, back end is staked down. Now I can work with the front end here without pulling things away. If I need to readjust later because I want the tarp to sit different, or I haven't got them staked down quite tight, I can make that adjustment. But for now, what we're going to go ahead and do is set this toggle up. So I got me a long piece of parachute cord, and I'm gonna make a clove hitch around my toggle, but it's gonna be in the middle of this cord so that I've got two long strands, one coming down each side. And I got a long piece of cord here, but I don't want to cut it. Want to save it for later. So I'll just take this cord and I'm going to run it right through the loop. Okay? Then I'm going to take some of that cord and I'm going to make a clove hitch and put it around this toggle. So just make a simple clove hitch, like so. Put the toggle through the clove hitch, pull it tight. Then I'm going to grab my other two ends of the strands, pull it through. So I got a simple clove hitch around that toggle, holding it in place, both strands coming up through here. All right, now got my bipod already done up. As I said, just a quick shear lashing. And I'm going to pull this up so that my cord is on this side of the toggle. On this side of the bipod. And I'm going to put my toggle right through there. Okay? I'm going to adjust the height that I want. I'm going to say that probably right there is a good height. So I'm going to grab two more stakes. And by the way, this setup does take about 6 stakes. And I'm going to stake down each one of these. Now, here's a little trick for you guys to know, the tip when you're doing this. If you take your cord and you run it out as wide as the legs are, it won't hold. It'll tip over backwards. So when you put your cord down into the ground, when you stake it down, it needs to be a little bit narrower than the legs on each side. Then it can't tip over backwards. But if the cord is out as wide as the legs or wider, it will tip over. So I'm going to go ahead, and I'm not going to do anything real fancy. If I was doing overnight, I might do a little different here. But in fact, you know what? I will just go ahead and do a marlin spike like so. And then I can adjust that and nail that down over here. I'll lower that camera here in a minute, guys, when I'm all done, so you can see what I've done, how this looks from the front. Turn around here. Okay. This first part can be a little awkward because you're trying to pull back. You got a 6-pound tarp pulling against you, trying to pull everything down. And so for that reason, it can be a little awkward. Like right now, I'm fighting this cord just a little bit, trying to get my first stake to hold. Well, sorry guys. As I said before, no sense in editing this stuff out if I had the equipment to do it, which I don't. But I don't think I would anyway, because guys need to see that everything doesn't always go smoothly the first time. Okay, There we go. Let me tap this down. Okay, first side is down in the ground. Same thing here. I'm just gonna do a marlin spike, and now it's kind of held, so it'll be a little bit easier. But show you guys this. When you make a marlin spike, I'm just making a loop, rolling this up, and putting my stake through that loop. And I'm going to pull it down here and reset the length on it so I can get it down here in the ground. There we go, right there. Okay, so I've got the front end held down in the ground now. I've got the back end staked down. I'm going to go around back, and if you remember in the last video, because I had the front end attached to a tree and the back end was wide open, we took a small bipod and we used that small bipod to pull up the center of the tarp for more room. Well, this time what I'm going to do is make a trucker's hitch right around the tree through that center loop to pull up for more room. Before I do, I'm going to go ahead and stake down these front two corners so that everything is set up the way I want it, except for the back end being raised up. So, pull this out right where I want it. Again, other side. Okay, she's set up and she's ready to go, and I'm going to pause you guys for just a second. Okay, what I wanted to do was drop the camera down so that you guys could see. So I got my cordage coming right down here to the side over here and to the side over here. So what I would do is put a fire right out here, a step in front, and catch the heat coming right through to me. My cords are off to the side rather than a single cord coming down in the middle that would be right where I want to have my fire. They're off to the side. I got my opening. So if I built a small fire, a good step out in front of this with some type of a reflector behind it, number one, to protect the smoke from coming in here and also to help move the heat this way. Heat would come in here, get trapped up inside here with me, and I'd stay nice and warm and dry. So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to go around back and pull that center up by attaching it to the tree. All right, I used the exact same knot as I did on the first video, just a simple double overhand. Just make a loop, make a double overhand knot, then run some cordage up through the center. My toggle on, and pull that tight. I'm going to run a trucker's hitch around this tree. pull my center up nice and tight. Make the trucker's hitch back here. Pull this through, not just once, but twice. The reason being, you pull that through twice, you can actually get enough tightness in there to where it'll stay in place on its own. There, like so. But tie it off anyway, just a standard trucker's hitch, and then I like to do a double, hold it really secure. Okay, back end is now pulled up. I'll go ahead and stake this down. I'd have to, I got 6 stakes with me and I got them all in use. So I'll carve one more stake real quick and stake this center one down so I have a little bit more room right back here. Let's go back around to the front and show you guys how much room is in this now. All right, back end has been lifted up. That center point in the back, staked down. I have got a huge amount of room in here. My feet are stretched all the way to the back with room to spare. I got room for another person. It'd be a little crowded, a little snug, but there is room to get 2 in here. There's plenty of room to get my pack and my gear in here. And I got the roof high enough to where I can sit under the entrance without hitting my head. So I got headroom, protected from the rain. Imagine that I'm out here in the fall. It's pouring down rain. I got a fire right out in front of me. I'm catching all that heat right here, staying completely dry in my oilcloth canvas tarp. Doing it the old-fashioned way, except for the plastic tent stakes, of course. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope you get the chance to get out and try it out. Again, the cool thing about this is, number one, oilcloth tarp. I already had this next to a roaring fire in the rain, and you know, occasionally the wind would switch and a few embers did hit the tarp. Absolutely no damage, no marks whatsoever. This thing is fire resistant. Second cool thing, this setup, by having your anchors off to the sides, leaves the front wide open so that you can put yourself a nice fire right in front. And there's other ways to do this, and I'll show you guys in future videos. I like this setup because it's like a tent inside. It opens up nice and wide in the back end. The back end is wider than the front. There's plenty of room for my gear. There's room to unroll a sleeping bag. There's room for, if you're married, you and your wife, to get in there together and use the heat of the fire out here in front. You could build a long fire across the front and throw on some logs and just let some of that heat flow in here throughout the night. There's other ways to do this. You can turn this whole thing around and use a plow point, which will not catch as much heat, but there's times that you may not want that heat and you can do it too. So we'll take a look at some other setups in future videos, but I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I hope that you're learning. I know that sometimes the camera angles aren't the best when I'm trying to show you knots up high and anchors down low at the same time, but I think you guys will be able to figure it out. And anyway, if you get one of these oilcloth tarps, or you decide to use this setup on just even a regular tarp, I'd love to hear about it in the comments and see how you guys are liking it. Thanks for watching and take care.